It's been a whole week since the start of this living nightmare. A whole week since I learned of the sick nature of the insane, the demented evil people which live among us. What possesses people to commit such twisted acts of violence is completely beyond me. All I know is that I was unlucky enough to have an insight into such horrific rituals. I guess it all started at the party. See, we had a party to celebrate my father's birthday. Everyone was invited, my father's co-workers, the family. I even invited a few of my own friends over. My dad allowed me to, as otherwise I would not have many people to talk to. I'm rather shy, you see, an introvert as my father calls it. I don't like talking to new people, but that's besides the point. I'm getting off track here. Well, the party turned out great. We all enjoyed ourselves. No, it wasn't the party itself which turned me into this mess. It was what I was given during the party. A tape. A VHS tape, to be precise. A single VHS tape which has completely destroyed me, robbing me of my happiness and replacing my thoughts with the horrific images which the tape contained. It hurts to type this. It just brings memories of that tape. All I want to do is forget all about it. I'd give anything to erase the images from my mind. I was given the tape by a friend of mine, a friend which I invited to my dad's birthday party. He didn't seem himself at the party, not at all. Usually he was rather sociable, quite the party animal. But at this party, he was rather quiet, isolating himself from everyone. He sat alone at the other end of the room, not talking to a person. For the few times that I spoke to him, he only gave vague, one-word answers, and sometimes just completely ignored me. I decided to stay away from him, thinking that something must have happened to cause him to be upset. Perhaps he broke up with his girlfriend. Well, that's what I initially thought at the time. At the end of the party, he approached me, tapped my shoulder, and when I turned around, he handed me a VHS tape. He told me that it belonged to me, and that I'd lent it to him years ago. I don't recall ever lending a VHS tape, especially as I haven't even owned a single VHS tape since I was a kid. I dismissed the thought, thinking that I must have forgotten lending a VHS tape for some reason, initially. When I said goodbye, he just turned around, stared ahead, and walked out the door, saying absolutely nothing. The day after the party, I went to watch the tape, to see what film I had lent, even to perhaps experience some nostalgia. If it was a childhood film, I went to my garage, looked for my old VHS player. It took a while to find it, but eventually I saw it under some old clothes. The VHS player had been completely covered in a thick layer of dust, so I wiped it off. The dust caused me to cough and hack. Once I got a hold of myself, I brought the VHS player into the living room and set it up near the TV. I grabbed the tape and proceeded to push it into the VHS player. It started off like a very old-fashioned film. The quality was incredibly grainy and not the greatest, but I thought that, as it seemed to be an old-fashioned film, it was to be expected. Plus it's a VHS. A countdown started, which was in black and white. It counted down to 10, and at 10, a scene of a human hand was displayed. The hand was covered in blood and appeared to be cut off from the arm. The fingers still moved despite this. The fingers moved together in a grasp-like position, as a hand covered in a surgical glove brushed past it. The countdown continued, but the scene of that hand played once more, and this time only for a second. The countdown continued again, but cut to static once reaching 5. I was shown a blue screen with play written at the top of the screen, as if the actual film was going to start. I sat back, took a deep breath, and prepared myself for what I had ahead of me. Was this a horror film of some kind? No, it couldn't have been. I'd never seen the movie in my life. Perhaps it was some kind of a sick joke. I didn't have much time to ponder as the next scene started. It started with 4 girls. They looked about 8 or 9 years of age. One was jumping up and down excitedly, like you'd expect from a small child. The other 3 were sitting on the couch, smiling and laughing. They seemed happy. They wore party hats, which told me that this was a home movie of a kid's birthday party. The quality was what you would expect from an old home movie, although the audio and video seemed to mess up, causing blue lines across the screen, and odd out-of-place sounds would also pop up too. I figured that the tape was incredibly old and faulty, and I just didn't think too much of it. Again, it's a VHS. For a fraction of a second, some more footage had played. I had to rewind it a couple times to figure out what it was. It appeared to be someone dressed up in a costume. In the end, I concluded that it was a kind of clown costume, which was checkered black and white. The clown-like figure seemed to be pulling a knife out of a young, blonde woman who was lying on this table. When I paused it to get a closer look, she appeared to be covered in large wounds on her upper arm and stomach area, to which I quickly realized that the clown must have murdered her. It cut back to the scene with the 4 girls. The camera panned to the girl sitting on the left of the couch. The girl on the far left seemed a lot younger than the rest of the other girls. She was stood up on the couch, holding the other girl's hand for support. The scene cut to all the girls sitting on the couch. I had a clear view of all of them this time. They were laughing and 2 of them were dancing a little. The innocence of the scene was reassuring, almost comforting. That clown scene once again repeating. His face seemed to be covered with a mask which resembled a skull. After pulling the knife out of the woman lying on the table, he slowly turned his head towards me. He stared ominously, which gave me the overall feeling of dread and terror. The footage then jumped and distorted, as he moved very quickly towards the screen while producing a blood-curdling sound, like a growl, an awful, devilish growl. The combination of the growl and sudden movements towards the screen sent my heart racing. The next scene was shot in a completely different place. It featured a very different young woman, lying down on a bed, covered by a white sheet. Beside her was a detached hand surrounded by a small puddle of blood. From this I figured that this was a continuation from the hand scene at the very beginning. A mysterious-looking man walked slowly towards the bed where the tortured woman was laying. The scene abruptly cut to the clown's face for just a second, which made me jump. Due to the unexpectedness of it, his face was right up at the screen, staring at me whilst emitting some kind of mischievous laugh or giggle. I turned away at the face. It was almost as if he was laughing at my misfortune, as if he was pleased with what he had done, pleased with his murders, and now he was pleased that I was watching, entertained by the way I squirmed and flinched at the horrors of what was displayed. When I looked back, I was greeted with the ever-so-familiar countdown. It counted from where it left off when it cut off to static previously. It continued from 4, but the 4 seemed to disintegrate. As the background cut off to static, the background flashed and distorted as the clown's mask appeared in the background of the static, again staring at me. The disintegrated 4 faded into another scene. I couldn't make out what the scene was, although it looked very unearthly and somewhat disturbing. I didn't even want to know what it was supposed to be. Once again, the scene cut to static. For a fraction of a second, something else appeared on the footage. I rewinded and paused it. It was a man. A man who would appear to have hanged himself. He had a noose around his neck and was hanging several feet from the floor. I quickly pressed play as I didn't want to look at it any longer. I sat by the VHS player this time, in case another split-second scene were to play. And I was right. I paused when the scene was played. What I was shown was a sink that was drenched in blood, with a knife lying crudely inside. I pressed play immediately. This tape was sick. The thought dawned on me as to why I was even still watching. As much as I wanted to turn it off, natural curiosity drove me to keep watching. Did this mean I was sick, too? Am I just as messed up as whoever made the tape? If there was truly something wrong with me, I wouldn't be bothered by all this, right? But I am bothered by this. Hell, more than bothered by it. After rationalizing things, I pressed play and continued to watch. The tape which continued to keep me hooked and glued to the screen. The footage of the man who had hanged himself was shown once again. This time the footage was played for a little longer. As the man spoke over, I tried to make out what he was saying, but as many times as I rewinded, I just couldn't make it out. What I saw next completely horrified and disgusted me. Unlike anything else I'd seen earlier on the tape, it was the same woman who was covered by the white sheet earlier in the footage. The man was cutting into her arm with a knife. He kept cutting deeper and deeper until the blood eventually began to seep out. The streaks of blood slowly ran down her arm, onto the white sheet where she lay. More and more of the red liquid poured out of the wound as he sliced deeper, more aggressively, and then started cutting into her wrist. He had to slice a few times, but once cut deep enough, a great surge of blood leaked out of the wound. All at once, as the hand was completely cut off. Unsurprisingly, it cut to static, and to my horror, once again, the scene of the hanged man was played. The entire scene lasted a full 12 seconds. For an entire 12 seconds, all that I stared at was a hanging man. God. As his body slowly swayed from side to side, some music played in the background. I instantly recognized it. It was You Are My Sunshine, but it sounded horribly eerie when played along with a scene like this. I just wanted to switch it off. After an agonizing 12 seconds, the tape finally ended. After the tape ended, I just sat there emotionless for about 5 minutes, just staring at a blank TV screen. I didn't know what to think. This deep, empty feeling seemed to take over my mind, leaving me as nothing more than a cold shell. I felt horrible. I couldn't begin to describe the way I felt. I never felt so shaken up in all my life. If you want proof of the tape existing, I'm going to post it here. Although I don't have a YouTube account of my own, a friend of mine was kind enough to upload the footage onto his account. To calm myself down after the tape, I got off the couch and made a cup of tea. While doing so, the thoughts had crossed my mind consistently, mostly of who were the victims, who was the clown, the man in surgical gloves. It was driving me nuts. I knew thinking over this wasn't going to improve the situation, but I wanted my questions answered. It was 3 a.m., and either my friend Harry, who gave me the tape at the party, would certainly not be online. As hard as it was to do so, I tried to forget about the tape and actually get some sleep. I sure as hell needed it. And after a very sleepless night, only getting about an hour or two, I got out of bed and immediately went onto the computer, signed into my email, and started composing an email to be sent to Harry. All that I asked was why he had given me the tape, and who exactly was the clown and victims in the video. Impatiently, I waited for a response. I decided to pass the time by going to the usual websites I go on. I watched a few YouTube videos, checked my Facebook, and finally, Twitter. Before long, a few hours had passed. I checked my email and Harry had responded. My heart raced as I clicked on the email, anticipating the response I had received. What he had told me was rather shocking and depressing, but also surprisingly fascinating. This was the response. Hey Andrew, to answer your question, the clown in the video was in fact an old friend of mine. We met in high school. He was always a very lonely kid, not really having many friends. He just walked around the school alone all the time. Then there was the bullying. He always attracted attention because of the appearance of his face, always negative attention. His face was incredibly disfigured. He told me his dad used to abuse him. He cut his face with knives, which caused many deep scars along his face. He told me his dad beat his face with a hammer during a drunken outburst. Because of this, his nose was shattered and out of place. His facial features were rather distorted. To the average stranger, it could be considered frightening looking. Anyways, because I felt sorry for him, I decided to befriend him. Big mistake. I regret the day I first spoke to him. I noticed there was something very, very wrong with him. He seemed to be obsessed with death and hurting people. He wouldn't shut the fuck up about it. He spoke nothing but hate, fueled by the rage that seemed to consume him. It was eating him up inside. It gradually got worse over time. He would often lash out at people for no good reason. This one time, some boy at school simply looked at him. The psycho reacted by grabbing the boy by the throat. I don't know what to do. He just held him there, then reached into his pocket, pulled out a pocket knife. He held the knife to his face and slowly carved into his skin. The boy screamed in agony. The most disturbing thing about it is the way he smiled as the boy screamed. It was a devious smile, which showed pleasure and satisfaction from the boy's pain. I had to do something. I attempted to grab him from behind, but quickly realized that he was a lot stronger than I am. As he released from my grip and threw me onto the floor like a rag doll, I stood up, dazed and hurt, as he slowly walked towards me. I'll never forget the look on his face, that shit-eating grin he possessed. The eyes that burnt with rage and desire. He lunged at me, missing my chest, but forcing the knife deep into my shoulder. The bastard is what caused the scar I now have there. I couldn't tell anyone about it, not the police, not the teachers, no one. I knew he'd get me back. He even told me if I told anyone, he'd kill me. I knew he would keep to his words. He's a lunatic. Of course he would. I knew I had to keep my mouth shut. He hasn't gotten much better either, now that he's 35. The blonde woman in the video is in fact his wife, and the 4 girls, his children, he brutally murdered them all. It was all over the local news. He usually attacks the local neighbors, not really anyone outside the neighborhood. He catches them by surprise. No one suspects when he would attack next, who he would attack next. All we know is that once he has his victims captive, he likes to torture them, and documents his rituals on VHS tapes. It's his twisted obsession. And sorry, Andrew, I can't give you his real name, but all I can tell you is that he is nicknamed Skester. Around my neighborhood, he gave himself the nickname, no idea why. He's known for writing the name on the windows of his victims' houses before he attacks. You see, he messes with his victims before attacking. He likes to mess with their head, make them think they're seeing things. The name acts as a warning. After killing, he cuts open the abdomens of his victims, empties the contents, and slices up the intestinal tract. He'd spell out the name Skester using the sliced piece of intestines on the floor next to the body of the victims. Just recently, his acts of torture and murder were reported, and he was sent to a mental institution labeled criminally insane and a danger to the general public. We may be safe for now, but will he keep put? After reading the email sent by Harry, it all made sense. It was a rather long email, but it summed up everything in the video, of course, except for the man who hung himself and the man wearing the surgical gloves. I sent another email to Harry responding to what I read in his email, as well as asking the questions I had. He responded shortly after I sent the message. The man in the surgical gloves is still Skester, except not in his clown outfit and mask. But did you notice you weren't able to see his face, even without his mask? Guess the lighting was tweaked to not show the face, huh? The man who hanged himself is in fact one of Skester's victims. He was a nice guy. Everyone knew him around my neighborhood, but he fell prey. It wasn't Skester himself who killed him, no, it was Skester's mental torment which had killed him. Before he committed suicide, he kept telling the neighbors about seeing things. Seeing a clown. No one believed him, of course, they thought he was going insane. He told everyone about a clown standing outside his window which would disappear when he was to take a proper look. He would hear giggles, low, subtle giggles, giggles that were so very chilling, so very real. He kept seeing the name Skester always written on his window. As many times as he cleaned it off, it would always reappear. After months of Skester's antics, the man was truly losing his mind. He wandered the streets with his clothes tattered and stained, complete with a beard. He staggered around the streets day and night, muttering Skester, Skester. The name was written all over his arms. He'd always sob, and he broke down into a tearful mess each cold night. Between the desperate sobs of anguish, all he cried out was Skester. He knew Skester was going to kill him eventually, so why would he want to give him the privilege when he could easily do it himself? He hung himself out of desperation to escape the hell of which Skester put him through. He was a toy. He was there for entertainment, but now he had escaped the clown circus. He's free. Skester, shortly after the poor man hanged himself, broke into his house and filmed the hanging body. That is the reason it appears on the tape. Just shows you the kind of warped freak he is. Reading Harry's email, it was clear that he seemed very different. He wasn't usually this emotional. He was usually a simple, straightforward guy, but the writing style seemed off, since Harry never wrote it this way. What I also found odd was that he never told me why he gave me the tape in the first place. It's like he completely ignored the question. Look, I'm gonna have to find out and get to the bottom of this. I'll keep you updated. We may be safe for now, but will he keep put? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Well, we got a really good creepypasta here, ladies and gentlemen. I always leave the links to these videos in the description below, so always check out the links. Please give these ones a look, read them for yourself. And this one really hits me in the face because I kind of didn't expect it. You know, usually I'm browsing through these links, and sometimes I just find one that completely encapsulates my interest. So for those of you who wondered in the middle when I mentioned YouTube, when I read that line, some of you were like, is this really up? Can I see it? Yes, you can. Go on to this creepypasta. In fact, I'll leave the link in the description below. There is a link to the video. You go onto the video. Apparently, it actually matches up to what was mentioned over here. It has a good amount of gore in it. Again, I'm going to give the warning. I do recommend you go watch the video first. Again, it does have graphic imagery in it. There is some gore going on. Plenty of gore, to be honest. So if you're gonna go watch it, just be a little careful on that. It's to be expected, and surprisingly, it's also not age restricted. Which, wow, nice rules there, YouTube. Probably due to the fact that the video, I think, is not relatively well known. At the time of me reading this creepypasta and looking through the video myself, it didn't reach 1,000 views. But maybe it might be picked up more by the algorithm once I make the video, and if people go around and it gets a little more traction. But regardless, the video exists, and is it good? It's decent, I will say. For a VHS, though, I will definitely say the quality is really good. Of course, it follows the rules of keeping. Well, it doesn't even keep the aspect ratios, to be honest. It's literally a high-def video that's portrayed to be on VHS tape. That's kind of interesting. The video itself is a mixed bag of genuine terror in a way, but also kind of laughable. The clown mask creature is, it kind of sends some chuckles once you really get up close and look at it, but at the same time, looking through some scenes, such as the man that's hanging, that is really odd to look through, and honestly, that did send chills down my spine. Usually I read these at night, and they really hit me if I see stuff like that randomly pop in. That was very unnerving. It has scenes from what I believe to be the guinea pig movies. For those of you who don't know what the guinea pig movies are, they're fake snuff films, but they're snuff films that are really well done to the point where the federal authorities actually looked into the entire series at one point to see if this wasn't actually a snuff ring. But that's a whole nother video on a whole nother at a whole nother time. I mean, if you want me to cover it, let me know in the comments section below. But going into more documented insanity, this was very well done. Now, of course, there's a good and a bad to it. We'll cover both sides. The good part about it, though, is it shows a level of restraint. It definitely is handled well. The whole introduction first act with the acquisition of the tape, it's fairly normal, you know. A friend gives it to you at a party, you go to the middle of it where the descriptions of the tape happens, the actual, you know, reactions, and they're regular reactions, you know. It's kind of a tape that you would watch, but at the same time you would have hesitations watching, and I definitely loved that it felt realistic all the way through. And I'm glad for once in a creepypasta they actually included a level of media. Now, to me, I don't think of this as required. There's many great creepypastas out there that don't have media related to it when they more so should. And are those bad? No, they're done very well. Here, the benefit of the media is that it shows that A, there was a lot of effort that went into this to film that, and B, it really brings you into the mood. Like, hell, even if you came across a video on YouTube like this, which, hell, if I came across this late at night, I'd be kind of scared, you know. Once I've read the creepypasta and then watched the video, you know, it's kind of laughable once you pause and really analyze it frame by frame. It's laughable, but coming across this, it is very eerie, and, you know, reading the actual reactions of the person who, in the creepypasta, you'd have those reactions too. You know, it's a person that's genuinely spooked by this kind of stuff, and, you know, it's not like this person's going to, you know, it's not like it starts off with them writing a suicide note or something, or doing something really, you know, shark jumping. Here, it's all normal. It's all very well handled, and the ending, I think, is done very well, too. Now, of course, when you get to the actual exposition of the serial killer himself, it's a little bit too much. You know, I get that you gotta call him Skester, and I guess that you gotta cover it, but it just sounds too expository. Like, just mention it's a serial killer or something. We'll fill in the gaps. You don't have to go all balls to the wall explaining the dude's backstory and crazed habits. Sometimes it came off as a little too contrived. I guess if you kind of held back, and I know this goes against my first mention that, oh, it has a lot of restraint. And, you know, it does, but this last act kind of broke that. But overall, it was still well handled. Now, going to the end, I absolutely love it. You know, it's one of those stories, I don't necessarily say go to a cliffhanger all the time. Cliffhangers aren't perfect, especially if they're not handled well at all. Here, it's kind of like one of those Reddit stories where, you know, or the Ted the Caver story where you have the update at the end, right? Where it's like, we'll update later, we'll cover you with an update, but there's no update. And then you fill in that gap and say, whoa, what the hell? And then there's these theories that you make of what really happened. Was a friend actually the killer? What was going on? And that's what I love. That's what makes a creepypasta, when it genuinely delivers the eeriness down your spine as you read through it. And when you get to the end, you have the proper questions. You know, you're not pointing out plot holes in the story. You're thinking what happens afterwards. And in that respect, I gotta say this was handled well. And it is a very good creepypasta. Of course, it's got some problems, but there is no perfect story. There is no perfect piece of media out there, and they all have flaws. This has its flaws, but in quite a while, I have read a story that's genuinely delivered some spooks down my spine, and I would really like to see more of this. These kind of stories. They're really handled well. This one, I think it's both the restraint, you know, the majority restraint that was shown in the story, combined with the amount of effort that went into creating the media for this, that really did cement this as one of my favorite stories I've read so far in this entire series. That being said, this video has gone on far long enough. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments section below, what you thought about this creepypasta, what you would rate it, what would you change to make it better, heck, what differences would you make to this movie, and why the heck is it not age restricted, I wonder. Let me know in the comments section below what you think. This has been another episode of Creepypasta, part of Haunted Gaming. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like it if you dislike it. This is me, Mutahar, and I am out.